Welcome back to another video from the Grumpy Agent Gamer PSVR, playing the Chantry. Steel Minions were kind enough to send me an advanced copy of the game. So pre-warned, there will be spoilers. It's very clear, it's very crisp. So yeah, let's get on, let's have a look. Don't really know anything about this game beside the trailer. So yeah, let's see what unfolds. Physicians of no value.
From the presence of the Lord, and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. Then said his friends unto him, Know that God exacteth of thee less than thine iniquity deserveth. And Job answered and said, My flesh is clothed with worms and clods of dust. My skin is broken and become loathsome. But ye are forgers of lies. Ye are all physicians of no value.
Oh. He's cross. 10th of February, 1823. The Chantry.
What? Where am I? This place is familiar. Not been here for years.
Point your head a foot so I can to make it faster, and then press any button to move in that position. Okay. So I can go to the big house or the smaller house. Let's go to the big one because that's the way I was facing.
There's something written on the door.
Physician.
Let's try the door handle. I don't like locked doors. I need to remember who lived here. My memory's still a bit hazy.
What do you mean? Very foggy.
I'm not climbing through no windows. I'm in enough trouble already. Difficult to see, but I think that's the breakfast room. Can't see anything inside. I think it's a false window. Something to do with symmetry. Something else may jog my memory further.
Like what? I can't see what else. So I think to be at an impasse. There's no other route, is there? Yeah, that wasn't there before, was it?
Oh, I am most wretched when alone, as every surrounding object reminds me of my irreparable loss. But no place on earth would at present suit me but my Berkeley home, and I trust my friends will not endeavour to take me away, for the bitter cup has a kind of relish in it here, which it could afford nowhere else.
I remember now. This was the home of that doctor. He was quite notorious in his day.
Trophy.
Okay. I'll be soused. It's like being there all those years ago. That letter was written the day before he died. Bit spooky.
My dear William, I hear by your father that you will return in a few days to Bristol. Be assured you will take with us my best wishes and affections. I am happy to certify that no boy could behave better than you did during your stay with me at the Chantry. Pursue this line of good conduct, my dear William, and you will be happy yourself, and make your father and everyone who loves you happy too. Your affectionate uncle, F.J. Why didn't that glow up?
The Berkeley family crest. Not much use at the moment.
Oh right, so I
This
have to...
painting don't belong here. I'd remember an expensive piece like theirs. It would look more at home inside Berkeley Castle. This painting don't belong here. I'd remember an expensive piece like theirs. It would look more at home inside Berkeley Castle. A map of the county. Might be useful later.
Oh, I see, so I need to come back.
It's inscribed with the name Wortley Montague. I've heard that name before somewhere. Now, I don't remember there being a Turkish lantern clock in the hallway. That letter was written the day before he died. Bit spooky. The Berkeley family crest. Not much use at the moment.
What? Can't I go over there?
It's inscribed with the name Wortley Montague. I've heard that name before, so. This was a doctor's country home. He had a townhouse somewhere in these parts, too. Can't remember where, but it'll come back to me.
That's quite
They call
interesting.
this place Chantry Cottage. I don't remember why, but there's been grand buildings round here for centuries. This is where the doctor carried out his curious studies. I dread to think what kind of experiments he used to get up to in here.
Who's this simpleton?
I need to remember more before I can go in here. What of it? The River Severn cuts through the English county of Gloucestershire, linking Bristol in the south with Gloucester. The Vale of Berkeley lies on the south bank of the river, between the two cities.
It was called the Chantry, from having in former times been in the possession of certain monks. It is contiguous to the churchyard of Berkeley Castle, and the tower of St. Mary's Church overhangs the southern boundary of the shrubbery.
That's it.
Trophy.
Before King Henry, this place were a home for priests. Priests who spent their days saying prayers for the dead. This painting don't belong here. I'd remember an expensive piece like theirs. It would look more...
24th of January, 1823. My dear William, I hear by your father that you will return in a
Just
few
read
days
that,
to
huh?
Bristol. Be assured you will take with you
Trophy.
my best wishes and affections. I am happy to certify that no boy could behave better than you did during your stay with me at the Chantry. Pursue this line of good conduct, and you will be happy yourself. Make your...
By all accounts, the doctor didn't travel much, but he had correspondence from all around the world. Apples from the doctor's garden. Well, he's a big fella, isn't he?
I'm quite enjoying this.
Another cupboard. I'll have to try a different way. A painting by the doctor's nephew, Stephen. The lady of the house had good taste in furniture.
What's this?
Thus our hero, being plundered of his estate and bereaved of his children, says, "Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord."
A fine piece of silverware. Might be useful later. A stone bust of Beethoven. No use to me at the moment.
At length the infection spread to the palace, and reached the young and blooming queen. She received the intimation of her danger with true greatness of soul. She gave orders that every servant who had not had the smallpox should instantly leave Kensington House and then calmly awaited her fate.
It's super realistic, isn't it? Like it's really it's real. I've got no comments. My wife just messaged me. You love a trophy? I certainly do. The comments aren't working. Just looking at my phone. Right, let's crack on. Crack-a-lacka.
Lord Dalkeith has been dead of the smallpox for just 3 days. It is so dreadful in his family. His eldest boy died of it last year, and his only brother, who was ill but 2 days, putrefied so fast that his limbs fell off as they lifted him into the coffin.
All the children that died. 3, 4, 7, 13 and 10 years old. 15-year-old. Oh, that's horrible, isn't it?
Child's toy. I'll leave it here, but I can always come back to it. A fine piece of silverware. Might be useful later.
Arr.
A stone bust of Beethoven. No use to me at the moment.
Pretty interesting.
The condition of a servant would be too severe were they not allowed some time which they may call their own. In all well-governed families, a maid servant has the liberty every Sunday or every other Sunday of going to church. If she neglects it, it discovers she has little sense of true religion, and may well be suspected of failing in her duty to an earthly master and mistress, when she fails in that to her Maker.
Respectable families expect their pound of flesh from domestic servants. Well, he's a big fella, isn't he? Apples from the doctor's garden.
If I'm missing something.
Small cupboard, but probably bigger than my cell. A painting by the doctor's nephew, Stephen. The lady of the house.
Bigger than my
taste in
cell.
Furniture. Perhaps I should open the shutters before I leave.
It was the most terrible of the ministers of death, always present, filling the churchyard with corpses, tormenting with constant fears all whom it had not yet stricken.
So in that case, let's go and see these things.
Beethoven and Mozart survived the smallpox with just a few scars, but many that survived it ended up blind as well.
Cooking up.
Lord Dalkeith has been dead of the smallpox for just 3 days. It left hideous traces of its power on those whose lives it spared, turning the babe into a changeling, at which the mother shuddered, and making the eyes and cheeks of the big-hearted maiden objects of horror to the lover. It left hideous traces of its power on those whose lives it spared, turning the babe into a changeling, at which the mother shuddered, and making the eyes and cheeks of the big-hearted maiden objects of horror to the lover.
List 6 children from the same family lost to the smallpox. Not every family was as unlucky as these poor souls, but 1 in 5 of those who
Trophy.
caught it wouldn't live to tell the tale. Unfortunately, not everyone who survived the smallpox could live with the terrible scars it left behind. Sadly, some even took their own lives.
The condition of a servant would be too severe were they not allowed some time which they may call their own. In all well-governed families, a maid servant has the liberty every Sunday or every other Sunday of going to church. If she neglects it, it discovers she has little sense of true religion, and may well be suspected of failing in her duty to an earthly master and mistress, when she fails in that to her Maker.
Smallpox was a cruel, hideous disease. It's no wonder they call it the Angel of Death.
Interesting.
Well, he's a big fella, isn't he? Apples from the doctor's garden.
Right. Let's check
Something's changed. I'm sure those stairs were blocked a minute ago.
They were. But let's check
The
this
dining
room.
room. That fine mahogany table was the perfect place to make my inventory. That portable desk came with me on all my jobs. Can't believe that miserly pawnbroker only gave me a shilling for it. That portable desk came with me on all my jobs. Can't believe that miserly pawnbroker only gave me a shilling for it. The doctor had a lot of paintings, but I never figured out who all the artists were. That's the doctor. His eyes follow you around the room. That's a wine cooler, and he had an impressive collection of wines in his cellar too. It looks like a genuine work by Bassan. It's been damaged at one point, but preserved with great care. That's one of them Gilray caricatures. I'll come back to it when I've explored a bit more.
On Thursday last at 2 o'clock, a balloon was launched from the inner court of Berkeley Castle, which rose to a very great height and was visible for a quarter of an hour. The same afternoon, it was seen to descend in a field in the parish of Kingscote, about 10 miles from Berkeley. The locals were so much terrified that they could not for some time be prevailed upon to approach it.
There's papers everywhere. I'll come back and tidy it later.
A couple of ridicules.
This deserves...
A small quantity of the serum of human blood was poured over about a square foot of grass. 3 sprinklings were given at the distance of a fortnight each, amounting to the serum contained in 40 ounces of blood. The effects it has produced on the vegetation of the grass is astonishing. It is beautifully green and thick and has sprung up several inches, while the surrounding grass has but just begun to shoot and looks of a yellowish green.
I wouldn't have left things this untidy. I still have my professional pride back then. That's a wine cooler, and he had an impressive collection of wines in his cellar too.
24th of January,
Done that.
1823. My dear William, I hear by your father that you will return in a few days to Bristol. Be assured you will take with you my best wishes and affections. I am happy to certify that no boy could behave better than you did during your stay with me at the Chantry. Pursue this line of good conduct, and you will be happy yourself, and make your father and everyone who loves you happy too. Your affectionate uncle, E.J.
This also gives us to consider that diseases are not only judiciously inflicted for past offences, but graciously also designed to prevent future. A little recollection will tell a man whether he has not often been kept virtuous through fear of the consequences, even when inclination has gotten the better of his duty.
Certain classes are less liable than others to consumption, either because the exhalation to which they are exposed preserve the lungs in a healthy state, or because they acquire from their mode of life a habit susceptible of the complaint.
His eldest son had a feeble constitution and other infirmities which rendered it inexpedient to send him to a public school. A domestic tutor was procured who was little older than his pupil, but though tender in years, he was old in wisdom and knowledge.
The doctor's eldest son died of consumption in 1810 at the age of just 21. That's just a cupboard. There's no way through here. Nice landscape. Nice landscape.
Selected poems by the late John Dawes Worgan of Bristol, who died on the 25th of July, 1809, aged 19 years.
So the young tutor died of consumption the year before the doctor's son.
I feel greatly obliged to everyone who attempts to console me in my present affliction. But you, who know so much of the human mind, are convinced how vain are these friendly efforts. I had no conception till it happened that the gash would have been so deep, but God's will be done.
He was lying in the last stage of pulmonary consumption. He had repeated hemorrhages from the lungs, and was then evidently approaching his end. I was introduced into the sick room, and there for the first time I saw Mrs. Jenner, the anxious and constant attendant of her dying child. He met with many discouragements, His notions
Ridicule.
having been treated with scorn and ridicule by some, and with indifference by almost all.
There was plenty of paperwork in the dining room I could look through.
Yeah, I remember. Don't worry about that.
That portable desk came with me on all my jobs. Can't believe that.
There nibbling at thistles stand Jim, Joe and Mary. On their foreheads, oh horrible, crumpled horns bud. They're Tom with a tail and poor William.
I have entrusted a most important matter to you, which I firmly believe will prove of essential benefit to the human race.
I'm
I
going a
should
bit
not
quick,
wish
aren't I?
what I have stated to be
Didn't
brought
mean
into
to skip that last
conversation.
one.
For should anything untoward happen, I should be made, particularly by my medical brethren, the subject of ridicule. For I am the mark they all shoot at. A small quantity of the serum of human blood.
On Thursday last at 2 o'clock, a balloon was launched from the inner court of Berkeley Castle,
then.
which
I have entrusted a most important matter to you, which I firmly believe will prove of essential benefit to the human race.
And this one.
I should not wish what I have...
On Thursday last at 2 o'clock, a balloon was launched from the inner court of Berkeley Castle.
So your book is out at last. Well, I can tell you that there bean't a copy sold in our town, nor shan't neither, if I can help it.
You must have believed in something to have resisted so
Trophy.
much scorn. It's inscribed with the name Watley Montague. I've heard that name before somewhere. Now I don't remember there being a Turkish lantern clock in the hallway.
No, but do you think that's the last...
Were your interviews for a new housemaid fruitful, Mrs. Knight?
Yes, madam. Both girls were hard-working and from respectable families, but only the Jones girl has had the pox, and plenty of scars to prove it.
Then you must select her. I will not risk the health of my family.
Pox scarring could often be a path into service. If you were lucky enough to survive the speckled monster, then you couldn't catch it again. My memory's still a bit hazy.
See if something around here has opened up. Thought I heard a door open. There we go.
This was the doctor's dressing room. Looks more like a laboratory. An unfortunate cuckoo, apparently.
Cuckoo? Oh, I see, it's a fetus.
William and Mary. She's the queen that died of smallpox. William and Mary. She's the queen that died of smallpox. William and Mary. She's the queen that died of smallpox.
Is she the queen that died of smallpox?
A paper about cuckoos. Not useful right now.
The doctor's previous education nor his habits gave him a relish of any of the branches of pure science. He seemed to have a peculiar horror of arithmetical questions, and he exclaimed that he would rather look for an hour at a mite through a microscope than have his time taken up with such things.
What have we got here then?
I selected a healthy boy, about 8 years old, for the purpose of inoculation for the cowpox. The matter was taken from a sore on the hand of a dairymaid who was infected by her master's cows. It was inserted on the 14th of May, 1796, into the arm of the boy by means of 2 superficial incisions, barely penetrating the cutis, each about ½ an inch long.
Never seen one of them before. It's got a face like a timepiece. This deserves closer.
I opened the thorax of a dog between 2 ribs and introduced the thermometer. Then I put some lint into the wound to keep it from healing, so that the thorax might inflame. But before I had time to try it again, from the hurry of business, my dog died. If these experiments will amuse you, I should be glad that they were made. But take care you do not break your thermometer in the dog's chest. John Hunter.
Alright.
The doctor's experiment scared a lot of people.
Trophy.
But there is something pretty unnatural about it all.
Hey guys. Just checking my phone. Fun body. Influx Evan T333. Demeclavir. Yeah, comments are really annoying. I have to keep checking my phone. Does not make for a good stream.
It's locked. I'd need a key for that.
It's locked. I need a key for that.
Smoking, I am sure, is harmless if used in moderation. A man who has a pipe at his command always...
I can't afford to smoke no more, but I reckon I feel better for stopping.
Right. So I need a key.
William and Mary. She's the queen that died of smallpox.
Certain classes are less liable than others to consumption, either because the exhalation to which they are exposed preserve the lungs in a healthy state, or because they acquire from their mode of life a habit susceptible of the complaint.
Selected poems by the late John Gove Worgan of Bristol, who died on the 25th of July, 1809, aged 19 years. I feel greatly obliged to everyone who attempts to console me in my present affliction. But you, who know so much of the human mind, are convinced how vain are these friendly efforts. I had no conception, till it happened, that the gash would have been so deep. But God's will be done.
It was called the Chantry, from having in former times been in the
Sounds like
possession
Steve
of
Coogan.
certain monks. It is contiguous to the church.
Were your interviews for a new housemaid fruitful, Mrs. Knight?
Yes, madam. Both girls were hard-working and from respectable families, but only the Jones girl has had the pox, and plenty of scars to prove it.
Oh, I know.
Then you
Okay.
must select her. I will not risk the health of my family.
Apples from the doctor's garden.
Here we go.
The doctor's library. Dr. Edward Jenner, that was his name. Looks like the French had their own issues with Jenner's vaccine.
He contrived in a short time to accumulate a series of specimens illustrative of comparative anatomy and natural history, which would have formed a
Timepiece.
museum of
I need
no
that.
inconsiderable magnitude.
This is fascinating.
Edward Jenner, physician, scientist, and fellow of the Royal Society. I seem to remember her name was Blossom. Doesn't seem relevant at the moment. Something to do with the migration of birds. Not relevant now. Pretty nasty looking sore. Maybe I'll look at this later. The Right Honourable George Rose MP. He helped Jenner create the National Vaccine Establishment. Edward Jenner and his parliamentary friends seeing off the anti-vaccinationists.
Phipps went through the cowpox apparently in a regular and satisfactory manner, but the most agitating part of the trial still remained to be performed. It was needful to ascertain whether he was secure from the contagion of smallpox.
Looks dangerous. I'll leave it alone for now. The freedom of the city of Dublin. Freedom anywhere sounds good to me.
Dr. Jenner set a great value upon these letters. They were carefully preserved in a cover which was inscribed in his own handwriting. Letters from Mr. Hunter to E. Jenner.
I still don't understand why someone would deliberately give cowpox to a healthy boy. There's something...
His attention was drawn possibly to the nature of cowpox while Jenner was yet a youth. A young countrywoman came to seek advice, and the subject of smallpox was mentioned in her presence. She immediately observed, "I cannot take that disease, for I have had cowpox."
Something to do with the migration of birds. Not relevant now.
Sarah Nelms, a dairy maid at a farmer's near this place, was infected with the cowpox from her master's cows in May 1796. Are you in good health, James? It's been 8 weeks now since you received the cowpox.
Yes, sir.
So now we must discover if
Trophy.
you are secure from the contagion of smallpox. We will use the lancet like before. Are you ready?
If cowpox wouldn't kill you, and it stopped the speckled monster, then it was worth catching it on purpose. But I don't much fancy being given the smallpox afterwards.
Towards the southern extremity of the lawn, and shaded by the thick screen of evergreens, is a small rustic apartment. Here, in the summer mornings, Jenner used to receive his poor neighbours who came for the purpose of vaccination. In this humble fane, more wonders were wrought than in all the splendid temples of Asclepius.
I'm really enjoying this. It really is fascinating. So, where to next?
The house feels different now. Perhaps I should look upstairs.
Upstairs it is.
What with him spending all that time around smallpox, I wonder why he didn't catch it himself.
African News, Turkish book, Sinful Sermon.
A paper about cuckoos. Not useful right now.
Smoking, I am sure, is...
I can't afford to smoke no more. But I reckon I feel...
I opened the thorax of a dog between two ribs and introduced the thermometer. Then I put some lint into the wound to keep it from healing, so that the thorax might inflame. But before I had time to try it again, from the hurry of business, my dog died. If these experiments will amuse you, I should be glad that they were made. But take care.
Dr. Jenner lived through the wars against revolutionary France and Napoleon, but I don't know what role he played. I need to remember more before I can go in here.
Okay.
This was Captain Jenner's room, Edward's youngest son. That's Oxford, where the young captain studied. Let's take a closer look.
Dr. Wickham, who was one of the travelling fellows of the University of Oxford, was in Paris when the command for the detention of the English was issued. The committee recommended that Dr. Jenner should immediately avail himself of his great celebrity in France and directly appeal to the Emperor.
Sire, having made a discovery of which all nations acknowledge the beneficial effects, I presume with great deference to request a favour from your Imperial Majesty. My humble request is to permit two of my friends, both men of science and literature, to return to England. One, Mr. William Thomas Williams, residing at Nancy. The other, Dr. Wickham, at present
It is the best.
I have the
Sorry,
honour to
the
be,
comments are broken on
deference and
PSVR at the moment.
Your Imperial Majesty's most obedient and humble servant.
So I have to keep checking my phone. Yeah, VR is the best. And quite affordable
Some
now.
kind of military manoeuvres. This deserves closer inspection.
At the end of 1809, Napoleon issued a decree that 100,000 francs should be at the disposal of the Minister of the Interior for encouraging and propagating vaccination throughout the Empire.
Robert Jenner was a member of the militia, but he wasn't old enough to have fought in the wars against France.
Can't put it on.
There's something special.
The alternative presented by the French government to His Majesty, in language the most peremptory and menacing, was the evacuation of Malta, or the renewal of war.
On guard.
His Majesty is actuated solely by a sense of what is due to the honour of his crown and the interests of his people, and by an anxious desire to obstruct the further progress of a system which may prove fatal to every part of the civilized world.
We'll all be soused. Jenner's vaccination helped the people of France when our countries were at war.
Dr. Wickham, who was one of the travelling fellows...
Sire, having made a discovery of which all nations acknowledge the beneficial effects, I presume with great deference to request a favour from your Imperial Majesty. My humble request is to permit two of my friends, both men of science and literature, to return to England.
So there's nothing in here, is there?
One, Mr. William Thomas Williams, residing at Nancy. The other, Dr. Wickham, at present at Geneva.
Writing on
I
it.
have the honour to be, with the
So I don't need to come back into
deference
this
and
room.
respect, your Imperial Majesty's most obedient
Unless that
and humble
unlocks.
servant, E.J.
That's just a cupboard. There's no way through here.
Certain classes are less liable than others to consumption, either because the exhalation to
Right.
which they are exposed preserve the lungs in a
What's
healthy
that?
state, or because they acquire from...
At 8 years of
Here we go.
age, Dr. Jenner was put under a preparatory process for inoculation with the smallpox. This preparation lasted 6 weeks. He was bled to ascertain whether his blood was fine and purged repeatedly until he became emaciated and feeble. After this barbarism of human veterinary practice, he was inoculated and removed to one of the stables where he
Let the atheist then, and the scoffer, the heathen and unbeliever, disclaim a dependence upon providence, dispute the wisdom of God's
This is so
government,
good.
and deny obedience to his laws.
a loop.
Let them inoculate and be inoculated, whose hope is only in and for this life.
To the memory of the Right Honourable Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, who in the year 1720 introduced inoculation of the smallpox into England from Turkey.
The sky looks brilliant. It's just a blue sky, but it looks brilliant. Oh,
Looks like the key to a desk drawer.
nice.
Beethoven and Mozart survived the smallpox with just a few scars, but many of them...
It left hideous traces of its power on those whose lives it spared,
Did I do
turning
that one?
the babe in...
6 children from the same family lost to the smallpox. Not every family was as unlucky as these poor souls, but 1 in 5 of those who caught it wouldn't live to tell the tale.
Lord Dalkeith has been dead of the smallpox for just 3 days. It is so dreadful in his family. His eldest boy died of it last year, and his only brother, who was ill but 2 days, putrefied so fast that his limbs fell off as they lifted him into the coffin.
The
Blimey.
object tells a story.
I have since met with a considerable number of these Africans who all agree in one story. People take the juice of smallpox, cut their skin, and put in a drop. They get a little sick, but nobody dies of it.
The Reverend Cotton Mather. This preacher died 100 years ago then. Let's take a closer look.
The smallpox, so fatal amongst us, is here entirely harmless by the invention of engrafting. The old woman comes with a nutshell full of smallpox, rips open a vein with a large needle, and puts into it as much matter as can lie upon the head of her needle. On the 8th day, the fever begins to seize them. Then they keep their beds 2 days, very seldom 3.
Trophy.
In 8 days more, they are as well as before their illness, and they never mark. There is no example of anyone that has died of it, and I am very well satisfied of the safety of this experiment, since I intend to try it on my dear little son.
The effect of the preparation and inoculation was this.
Let the atheist then, and the
Right.
scoffer, the heathen and unbeliever, disclaim a dependence upon providence, dispute the wisdom of God's government, and
Where
deny
was the
obedience to
key?
his laws.
Where's the locked door?
Let them inoculate and be inoculated, whose hope is only
Downstairs,
in
wasn't it?
and for this life.
Was it? No, it wasn't. It was over here, wasn't it? Not been in there. Let's do this. Trophy.
What have we got here then?
Mr. Jenner, after the most advantageous and well-attested success of the vaccine in England, I hastened to imitate this example by introducing it into the pious establishments under my direction. I am pleased to report its success and show my gratitude to one who has provided this service to humanity. The motive engages me to offer you the attached ring as a testimony of the sentiments of esteem and goodwill with which I am most affectionate, Marie.
The doctor's bedroom, where he finally passed from this world. Another painting by Stephen Jenner. Look what he's put in the background.
Picture of the house. The Chantry.
Jenner certainly had friends in high places. Might look at it later.
Legacy.
This thing keeps turning up. Probably important later. Probably some sort of bird you'd see down on the Seven Estuary.
Mrs. Jenner's health became evidently more impaired. She was so slender, so attenuated, and so much deprived of all vigour of constitution by protracted illness. I visited her in Cheltenham the night before she expired, and when she was in full expectation of the fatal event. She had long been preparing for her final account, but her death may be considered as the signal for Dr. Jenner's final removal from public life. He retired immediately to Berkeley, and never, except for a day or two, quitted again. He was below the middle stature, his hair dark and a little inclining to curl, and it was observed at his death that he was not the least grey. He was rather nearsighted, but never made use of glasses. His dress was black, a large collar to the coat, and loose, low trousers, the dress of the day.
Shadow portraits were very fashionable, but not worth much.
She was elegant in her manners, accomplished in her mind, and possessed an understanding of great vigour. She had been an invalid for a considerable time before her marriage, and never enjoyed robust health.
Both his wife and son were taken by consumption. After all he did for medicine, that must have been hard to cope with.
That's a very distinguished portrait of the Doctor. This deserves closer inspection.
I avail myself of this occasion to render you my portion of the tribute of gratitude due to you from the whole human family. Medicine has never before produced any single improvement of such utility. You have erased from the calendar of human afflictions one of its greatest. Yours is the comfortable reflection that mankind can never forget that you have lived. Future nations will know by history only that the loathsome smallpox has existed, and by you has been exterminated. Accept the most fervent wishes for your health and happiness, and assurances of the greatest respect and consideration. Thomas Jefferson.
Blimey. What's that? It says letters.
Jenner certainly had friends in high places. Might look at it later.
Legacy.
Another painting by Stephen Jenner. Look what he's put in the background.
Something has changed again.
That's Oxford, where the young captain studied.
I've done this one, haven't I?
At the end of 1809, Napoleon issued a decree that 100,000 francs should be at the disposal of the Minister of the Interior for encouraging and propagating vaccination throughout the empire.
Some kind of military manoeuvres. Vaccination wasn't Jenner's only legacy, but I forget what else he got up to.
Okay.
24th of January, 1823. My dear William, I hear by your father that you will return in a few days.
Silver trophy.
Be assured you will take with you my best wishes and affections. I am happy to certify that no boy could behave better than you did during your stay with me at the Chantry. Pursue this line of good conduct, and you will be happy yourself. Make your father and everyone who loves you happy too. Your affectionate uncle, E.J.
My memory's still a bit hazy.
So legacy's up. Was it up here? Where was that? No.
This summit's...
Dr. Jenner's discovery is unquestionably the greatest discovery ever made for the preservation of the human species. It is proved that in these United Kingdoms alone,
45,000 persons die annually of the smallpox. But throughout the world, not a second is struck by the hand of time when a victim is not sacrificed at the altar of that most horrible of all disorders. I shall therefore move that a sum not less than £10,000 be granted, but when I do this, I declare
still
I
aren't
do
working.
not think it sufficient. If the House should think it right to adopt any larger sum, I shall hold myself free to vote for it.
Let me check this over.
It was his intention that it should have first appeared before the public in the transactions of the Royal Society. When the subject was laid before the President, Jenner was given to understand that he should be cautious and prudent, and ought not to risk his reputation by presenting to the learned body anything which appeared so much at variance with established knowledge. The painful disappointment which he experienced caused this design to be abandoned, and the work appeared as a separate publication. Mrs. Jenner's health became evidently more impaired. She was so slender.
Dr. Jenner's discovery is unquestionably the greatest discovery.
It was his intention that it should have first appeared before the public in the transactions of the Royal Society. When the subject was laid before the President, Jenner was given to understand that he should be cautious and prudent, and ought not to risk his reputation by presenting to the learned body anything which appeared so much at variance with established knowledge. The painful disappointment which he experienced caused this design.
I can't afford to smoke no more.
I opened the thorax of a dog between two...
I selected a healthy boy, about 8 years old.
Mr. Jenner, after the most advantageous and well-attested success of the vaccine in England, I hastened to imitate this example by introducing it into the pious establishments under my direction. I am pleased to report its success.
Dr. Wickham, who was one of the travelling fellows of the...
Sire, having made a discovery of which all nations acknowledge the beneficial effects...
At the end of 1809, Napoleon issued a decree that 100,000 francs should be at the disposal of the Minister of the Interior for encouraging and propagating vaccination throughout the Empire.
Robert Jenner. So he vaccinated his own son at just 11 months old.
Certain classes are less liable than others to consumption, either because the exhalation to which they are exposed preserve the lungs in a healthy state, or because they acquire from their mode of life a habit susceptible of the complaint.
I feel greatly obliged to everyone who attempts to console me in my present affliction. But you, who know so much of the human mind, are convinced how vain are these friendly efforts. I had no conception, till it happened, that the gash would have been so deep. But God's will be done.
The smallpox, so fatal amongst us, is here entirely...
Let the atheist then, and the scoffer, the heathen and unbeliever...
I have since met with a considerable number of these Africans who all agree in one story. People take the juice of smallpox, cut their skin, and put in a drop. They get a little sick, but nobody dies of it.
Beethoven and Mozart survived the smallpox with just a few scars, but many that survived it ended up...
It left hideous traces of it.
6 children from the same family lost to the smallpox.
Where
Not every family was as lucky as these poor souls, but 1 in 5 of those who caught it wouldn't live to tell the tale.
I believe there's a trophy for completing the game in half an hour.
The condition of a servant would be too severe were they not allowed some time which they may call their own.
Which I don't think I'm going to do.
In all well-governed families, a maid servant has the liberty every Sunday, or every other Sunday, of going...
Were your interviews for a new housemaid fruitful, Mrs. Knight?
Yes, madam. Both girls were hard-working, and from respectable families, but only the Jones girl has had the pox, and plenty of scars to prove it.
Then you must select her. I will not risk the health of my family.
More comfort than I'm used to, but I can't put my feet up now. Something else may jog my memory for...
Migration journal. Migration journal, where are you?
That portable desk came with me on all my jobs. Can't believe that miserly pawnbroker only gave me a
I have entrusted a most important matter to you.
So your book is out at last. Well, I can tell you that there bean't a copy sold in our town, nor...
On Thursday last at 2 o'clock, a balloon was launched from the inner court of Berkeley Castle, which rose to a very great height and was visible for a quarter of an hour. The same afternoon, it was seen to descend in a field in the parish of Kingscote, about 10 miles from Barclay. The locals were so much terrified that they could not for some time be prevailed upon to approach it.
Looks like the French had their own issues with Jenner's vaccine.
Dr. Jenner set a great value upon these letters. They were carefully preserved in a cover which was inscribed in his own handwriting.
Are you in good health, James? It's been 8 weeks now since you received the cowpox.
Yes, sir.
So now we must discover if you are secure from the contagion of smallpox. We will use the lancet like before. Are you Sarah Nelms, a dairy maid at the farmers near this place, was infected?
The observation of the migration of birds were read before the Royal Society on November 27th in the year Jenner passed away. They were presented to Sir Humphrey Davy by the Reverend G.C. Jenner, who had the peculiar happiness to accompany his uncle in most of the investigations of the phenomena of migration.
Jenner was first made a Fellow of the Royal Society for his work on cuckoos, but they refused to print his smallpox research because it was too controversial. But his achievements were eventually recognised by Parliament itself with 2 huge grants. I could do with one of those. Some relation of the Jenner family, no doubt.
So felt the towering soul of Montague, her sex's glory and her country's too, who gave the spotted plague one deadly blow, and bade its mitigated poison flow. With half its terrors, yet with loathing still, we housed a visitant with power to kill. Then, when the healthful blood, though often tried, foiled the keen lancet by the Severn side, resisting uncontaminated still, the purple pest and unremitting skill. When the plain truth tradition seemed to know, and simply pointed to the harmless cow, doubt and distrust to reason might appeal. But when hope triumphed, what did Jenner feel?
He was dining with a party at Bath when a question arose whether the temperature was highest in the centre of a candle flame or at some small distance from its apex. Jenner, with his usual ingenuity and readiness, soon settled the dispute. He placed the candle before him, inserting his finger into the middle of the flame. He retained it in this situation for a short time. He then placed it a little above the flame, but was compelled immediately to withdraw it. "There, gentlemen," he observed. "The question is settled."
Not the greatest painting. Must have had some sentimental value. The doctor cut an impressive figure in his youth.
He could also play on the violin and flute, and he was in the habit of forming musical parties. I have seen him in his later years, after his renown had filled the world, and many cares had weighed heavy upon him, shake them entirely off and take up a humorous strain as he sang one of his own ballads with all the mirth and gaiety of his youthful days.
I think that was his brother, or maybe his father. A beautiful countryside scene. I think I should have liked to have met the doctor. He seemed like a decent sort.
Within this tomb hath found a resting place the great physician of the human race, immortal Jenner, whose gigantic mind brought life and health to more than half mankind. Let rescued infancy his word proclaim, and lisp out blessings on his honoured name, and radiant beauty drop one grateful tear, for beauty's truest friend lies buried here.
Trophy. John was employed to create probate inventory of the estate. Recently since deceased, Dr. Jenner. I'm a bit mumbly there. This inventory was invaluable to the reconstruction of Jenner's home, providing the name and contents of each room in the house. Unfortunately, John Hall Hunt was sent to debtors' prison in 1828, and he died in Wotton at the age of 39, just 2 years after his release. It was this character in the backstory which inspired the player's character in the game. That's a name. Oh, he did talk about his cell, didn't he? Edward Jenner's Berkeley home still stands today, and you can explore it for yourself at Dr. Jenner's house, museum and gardens. Well, that was excellent. Created funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme under grant agreement number 732599. No more of that.
On the 8th of May,
After Brexit.
1980, the World Health Organization issued a declaration that smallpox had finally been eradicated throughout the world. Since that day, not a single case has been recorded, and future nations will know by history only that the loathsome smallpox has existed.
Excellent. Really interesting. I wonder if I got all the trophies. Yeah, thanks to Steel Minions for sending me the game key. I really, really did enjoy that. Well done, guys. It's beautifully drawn as well. And the voice acting's excellent. Yeah, I'd absolutely recommend it. I'm not sure what the price is going to be. I'm a bit annoyed I accidentally skipped past a couple of the passages just because I picked something up too early and while it was still talking. A welcome change from monsters and automatic rifles. Beautifully made. Really well acted. And educational. So yeah, a little different to what usually on my channel, but I absolutely love this. Do leave a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you don't already. I'll let the credits roll. Another sad reason for leaving the EU. There won't be funding for such beautiful games like this. Looks like that's just rolling. So yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Right, welcome back. Let's have a look what else there is. I just spotted this museum option.
He was dining with a party
so
at
that's
Bath
you can
when
just
a
go back.
question arose whether the temperature was highest in the centre of a candle flame or at some small distance from its apex. Jenner, with his usual ingenuity and readiness, soon settled the dispute. He placed the candle before him, inserting his finger into the middle of the flame. He retained it in this situation for a short time. He then placed it a little above the flame, but was compelled immediately to withdraw it. "There, gentlemen," he observed.
We didn't solve
Question
the
is
riddle of the clock, did
It's
we?
inscribed with the name Wortley Montague. I've heard that name before somewhere. Now, I don't remember there being a Turkish lantern clock in the hallway.
So what's... There is no mystery of the clock.